Hello everybody and welcome once again to Wisconsin Wonder Garden. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We are going to be repotting our Hoyas. I believe these are Hoya carnosa plants. If you recalled in a previous video, the reason why we're repotting them is because I inherited these from my mother-in-law and both of them are lacking on the side of soil. They could really use a good 2 or 3 inches of extra soil in this pot. I figured this would be a great opportunity to teach you guys how and when to repot your Hoya, as well as what sort of soil you need to put it in. We are just going to get right at it with my trusty old indoor houseplant spoon. We're just going to dig out the roots here. I would say that typically you really don't have to repot these very often. Really, it's like once every 2 to 3 years is fine. Unlike a lot of other plants, these Hoyas don't mind being on the more root-bound side. So you really do need quite a large plant before it needs to be repotted. Like I said, usually this will be 2 to 3 years. If you go like 3 years, in most cases, you're not going to have any problems with that. Okay, so we just took those out, and I guess the old soil here, it looks like it is pretty old, and also I'm not sure what sort of a mix it is, but when you guys are doing this, if you're making a mixture of your own at home, you could really do a 50% regular soil and then 25% perlite along with 25% peat moss. That is going to be an optimal mixture for many different species of Hoyas. You have a good drainage, but yet some nice and rich soil along with that peat moss. That kind of helps add to the microbiome, the composition of that soil. So again, that's 1 part or 50% regular soil, and then half part perlite or 25% perlite, and then another 25% or half part of peat moss on top of that. I have a pre-made mixture that is going to work great for these plants already. If you would like to, it's just an indoor potting mix by Miracle-Gro. Nothing special. I looked at the ingredients and the ratios in this thing, and it's going to be great for these Hoyas. So I've got a link to that soil down in the description below. If you would like to go the easy route, you can just do that. Otherwise, purchase larger quantities of the different materials, the regular soil, perlite, and peat moss, and then you can mix those together depending on what type of plant you are currently planting. I found that's a great way to save money, is buy in bulk and then mix together as needed. And it's also fun to experiment because you can change the ratios up whenever you would like. So what I'm doing is going about halfway into each pot. That way, of course, you guys all know you can then seat the plant in there and then bury it the rest of the way with more soil. When adding soil, I don't press it down a lot, but I do kind of just lightly tamp it down to make sure that it's not going to sink into the pot too much. Otherwise, you'll think you have a full pot of soil when in fact you actually only have like 70 or 75% after you water it of that soil compacts, and you got to add more soil. So just to show you, there we go. You can see by my fingers I'm 2 knuckles in there, so a little bit more than 50% on that one. And right there you can see we're about to here with the soil. And we are just going to dig a little bit of a hole for these roots. They're not root bound or anything, so I can just plop it right in as is. I'm not going to cut them up or anything either. Just going to stick them right in there. Then we can add soil around it. Another thing that's worth noting is you don't have to worry about if you're a node or so below the soil when you plant this in here, like it wouldn't need to be at the exact same depth as it was before. That's not going to cause any extra damage to your plants. I know I've gotten a couple of comments like that in the past, wondering if that's going to damage it. In this case, you will be a-okay with the Hoya just because of its growing characteristics. And then after I repot my plants, I do take a mister to the plant just to make sure that I knock off any soil that might have gotten stuck in between the leaves and the stem. So there we are. That one is now all planted and good to go. We got the soil about 1/2 inch down below that lip. Now it can grow happy and healthy with the right soil composition as well as the right amount of soil in that pot. Just finishing up this second one. And I will talk to you guys about watering. You can give these a nice water now that we are done repotting them. And then you would carry forward with a regular watering schedule of once every 10 to 14 days. This can vary a little bit depending on where you live in the country or the world, because some places are just more humid than others. Here in Wisconsin, I will be sticking to my regular once every 2 weeks, every 14 days, I will be watering this, because I do that with most of my plants in here are getting watered once every 2 weeks. That watering schedule is for most of the growing season though. You're going to slow down a little bit in the winter. That is going to be reduced to about once every 3 weeks. Maximum, like if you guys are really busy, you can do a 4-week schedule just fine. But try and stick to about 3 weeks during the winter months and then bring it up to a once every 2 week watering after that. A good rule of thumb is just to stick your finger down into the soil and make sure that it is dry to the second knuckle. That rule will hold true with these Hoyas as well. If it is still really moist, then don't water it for several days. Check again, and then if it's dry, go ahead and water it. You're going to just water the soil thoroughly, so make sure that water is coming out of this bottom dish at the very least. If not, give it a few more seconds of water before, and then just tip that dish over if it is overflowing. But for a pot like this size, it's going to take about 2 to 3 cups of water per watering. And a lot of that excess water, like I said, will be held up in these dishes. Whatever sort of pot you have, it doesn't really matter as long as it is draining. If you don't have a pot with drainage holes, then for something like this, like we would have a 2 to 3 cup ratio of water on this, I would bring that down to about 1 cup of water for both of these if it were a non-draining container, because that water is going to hold up in there and not go anywhere, where on this one it is going to come out to the bottom dish, and there is a little bit more of an airflow, so it will evaporate faster than a sealed container. So just keep that in mind whether or not you have a sealed container. Do about one, if you're measuring it out, do about 1/3 of the container's worth of water if you do have a draining container. That's going to ensure that the soil is getting wet enough in order to provide these plants with what they need for the next couple of weeks before you water them again. Coming up with these Hoyas, we will be doing probably a care video, and we will also be doing a propagation or cloning video on these. As you guys know, I love cloning and propagating plants, so I'm excited to try it out with these Hoyas. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Click the box over on this side of the screen to move on to the next video. I wish you all a great and wonderful gardening adventure. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.